Hello, Alex. How are you?
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for sitting and having a conscious conversation with me, hosted by the House of H. Um, Today I just wanted to talk with you about your spiritual development because I'm rather intrigued by the process that queer people go through because it's not an inherently smooth path for many, and usually
Oh, no, certainly not.
usually it involves people needing to pave or find their own way. And so, since that's the case, I just figured I'd have conversations with all of my intelligent queer friends, and you are among them. So please introduce yourself, Alex, however you want to do that, and then I will get into asking you questions.
Okay, sure. I'm I'm Alex. I came out when I was 35 with a wife and three young girls. Um, and
You took the easy
yeah,
path. We get it.
the
No, I'm just
church,
kidding.
I took the easy path. Yeah. Yeah, I was a stay-at-home dad for like 10 years before coming out, or not quite 10 years, but about that. Definitely didn't have a real job, so to speak. Still kind of don't. Um, yeah, so I don't know. We
We
can
love
go
it.
from there.
So, okay. So that brings something interesting to mind for me, at least. As a queer person who came out later in life, what was your experience like early in life with spirituality and with whatever that experience was for you? I don't know necessarily what you were brought up believing, but like many queer kids have issues with religion and spirituality because there's like this inherent I don't belong here with like some preaching, especially when you and I grew up like in the 80s, 90s type time period. Like that was a really
Right.
big thing. So what was your childhood like in spirituality and in belief system?
So let me preface this also by saying that my grandfather was president of a seminary. My dad's has the doctorate that my grandpa created in ministry. My aunt was president of the denomination in Massachusetts when I was growing up. So we were pretty religious and we are pretty tight-knit extended family too. We spent all of our summers together under one roof with 10 people all summer long.
Cozy.
So I was with three ministers all summer long. And then I moved around a bunch. So like that was like my home base was like in that chaos with the three ministers and the 10 people in one room. Um,
That
and
sounds like a
the three
punchline waiting to
generations.
happen, by the
So,
way.
oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Um, so, but my spirituality, I really felt a connection to God, I the universe, whatever you call it, at a very young age. I felt a strong connection. And then I later realized when I went to a concert, I just kind of liked the music. I so
So wait, I
um
have a question because I'm not
sure.
sure like what uh religious denomination you grew up culturally. Like you use the word minister and stuff, which is usually like specific to
It's Protestant.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when you said you liked the music, was that like let us build the city of God? Was it like that type of a vibe
Oh
or
no, it
was it
wasn't
like
praise music.
oh
No, it
okay.
was traditional hymns with an organ, and it
Okay.
was very waspy, but like it was really well done. Like
Okay.
in my music inclined, from what I know of music, it was pretty well done, especially considering how I go to churches now and it's not always well done. Um, so
You're like sometimes there is
my
something lacking.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, Unfortunately, you need to find the right amount of passion with the right amount of talent, I find. So
Like with
if
anything.
you're super passionate and not very talented, Yeah, exactly. Or if you're like super talented but you don't really love what you're singing, I can sense that too. So,
Hmm.
um, but yeah,
So
we were American Baptist, the liberal stepchild to the Southern Baptist. We split up from them in over slavery in like the 1860s. It
so
was
that
called
was
the
like the
Northern Baptist
divide.
Convention originally.
I'm sorry.
That
That
was
was
the
like the
divide.
historic
Yeah.
divide. Okay.
Yeah, the historic divide.
I'm gonna um I'm gonna switch to my
So,
hotspot because this is being all jumpy, the connection.
yeah, I thought so too. I'm gonna go upstairs, which is closer to the Wi-Fi too.
Okay.
So we can both like, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let me just make sure yeah, I have enough battery. Okay. Whoop. Oh, that's the end of that.
That's the end of that.
I just destroyed a lampshade. I tripped on something and destroyed a lampshade. Mm. Is this better?
Yes, I think so.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
There's gonna be a cut in the middle of the interview, and you're just gonna have a different background, and people are gonna be like, "What happened?"
Oh yeah. Oh, good Lord. The sun is killing you. All right. All
Perf.
right. Just get the here we are. Zoom keeps like the camera is different now. It's wild.
I don't know how it does that because it doesn't do that on me. I don't know if I maybe turned it off somehow by accident, but it does what Google Meets used to do, where it would be like, zzz, and it would like center you.
Yeah, or the portal from Facebook when they did that, the camera would follow you around the room. Do you remember this?
No.
Yeah, they had a couple ads. My sister worked on their sound design. That's how I'm familiar with it.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
So
1860s.
change of background, change of scenery. Um, I'm gonna ask you to revisit because it was jumpy on my end, at least.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, it might have been mine
you were
too.
saying Northern Baptist versus Southern Baptist and how the divide happened during or over slavery. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct.
Cool. So, um, at what point in your experience outside of the music did you realize, like, I don't know if this is me or is it, or like, I don't know if this is speaking directly to me. Do you feel it is speaking directly to you? What is your experience in that way? Because I know when I was younger, um, like my cousin, I didn't grow up with like ministers like you did, but like my uncle was a priest. I grew up around priests. Um, I had cousins that were like altar boys and stuff. So like I grew up very much in a similar situation, Roman Catholic and denomination.
Yeah.
But like I remember my cousin being like, who was an altar boy, he was like, if that was really like blood, would you drink it? And I was like, I mean, I guess if it's God's blood, like God is a vibe, right? So sure. Like I don't like
Yeah.
you're asking like a 7-year-old this, and I'm like, I've
Right,
never
right.
really thought about vampirism or cannibalism before, but sure. Like
Uh,
so. What at like what point did you start to question things, or did things seem like, what is this? What am I actually doing? Because I think even if you feel at home in a tradition, there's still a moment of like, well, what is this? What is this actually? Like, what am I doing?
yeah, well, I was fortunate that my dad is very well versed in the Bible because like he's a minister, but that doesn't
That'll do
necessarily
it.
um but he always had an interesting perspective on things. So, um f- for example, there's like a lot of examples. He thought hell wasn't actually hell. It's just like you chose to be separated from love, which is God. Like that's your choice. And that's what hell is. It's not like fire and brimstone. You're not going to be punished. You're just choosing with your own free will something other than love.
Yeah. That
Or,
that resonates with me. I mean, that speaks to
yeah,
my heart because I think that that's very accurate as to like what hell would be.
right. And he sees the Bible as like the evolution of our understanding of the concept of God. So like when you're a kid, you get like jealous pretty easily, and then as you like learn about life and you learn about compassion, then like things change. And I think that, and he thought, and I also agree that the Bible just records that progression of like your relationship uh, as like a human, like with the concept of God. Um, and I also this isn't totally relevant, but I feel like it is. My grandfather was 94, I think, when I came out. He's like sharp as a tack. Um, and when I came out to him, he said, I've known that something was bothering you for a long time, and I'm glad you figured out what it was."
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that so much because
He's
that's
like, I
like,
didn't tell anybody that I was worried about you, but I was secretly worried about you. And
oh,
um, I'm glad you figured it out.
that's beautiful. And that's really like what it should be. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that type of a I don't like to judge people's development or like I don't like to should anyone. Like I don't I don't
Right.
I think that that's how you get into trouble. But I definitely think that that's a beautiful response to to coming out. I mean, I know directly so many people that were in families that were very religious and spiritual or whatever that it um it did not go in their favor. It was not that smooth upon coming out.
Oh my gosh. It was so smooth for me, like as smooth as it could have been, because my ex-wife's father is also a minister. And and he's been nothing but loving to me the whole time. And same with her side of the family for the most part.
That's that's beautiful that that is the way that that happened for you.
Yeah.
Um, so then, and I just want to say, I love the approach that your family has to the like to the Bible. That it's like just kind of a book of parables and lessons and stuff like that. It's not this like
Right.
literalism that a lot of people have,
No.
which I think that's where it gets like dangerous in my opinion. But
Well, it's dangerous, and if you take everything literally, there's so many my dad says conundrums, but I feel like paradoxes or things that are ironic, like things that just wouldn't make sense. Like if, and I thought this when I was growing up, I was like, well, if God is love and love is patient and kind and not envious or boastful or rude, blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
then how could God have been so jealous in the Old Testament? Right? Like,
yeah.
so, um,
Old Testament God definitely more fire and brimstone. Definitely,
definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, and so and then I look at what's the most important commandment, and it's to love God, love your neighbor, and love yourself.
Yeah.
And and then there's someone that tries to throw Jesus under the bus a little bit. He's like, "Oh, but who's my neighbor?" And Jesus is like, and then he tells the story of the Good Samaritan, and he's like, "That's your neighbor. Your enemy is your neighbor. You're supposed to love your enemy." And that is the lesson that I keep going back to the church for. I don't really go back for the miracles. Like they might have happened, they might not have. I know like there's a placebo effect for a reason. Like I think like God has like the belief in God has some power for sure. Um, but I don't necessarily think that um, think that taking the Bible literally all the time is gonna get you there. I think it's like you have to listen to the Holy Spirit too, right?
Yeah.
And that's what gives you peace. And so that's actually how I explained to my children when I came out. I said, Dad feels at peace with boys. So mom and dad are no longer a couple.
Oh, and thank you for sharing that because I hadn't I hadn't thought about asking you that quite honestly, but it's something that I definitely like. It's an intriguing thing because I don't know anyone that has had children and then come out after the fact. So like that's very, and I think that's a beautiful way to explain it to them too. Like it's matter of fact, and I mean your kids are 10 now, like right around that age range, right? Like
I have an 11-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
yeah. So did how did like they take that when you told them? Like, what was that like?
They said, okay, can I watch Footloose?
Love it. And you were like, it's a musical, of course.
Like, yes, you may watch Footloose. Yeah.
So, how you and I met actually was in a group about like earth-based spirituality and like witchiness
Right.
and all of that. So, it sounds like the spiritual belief you grew up in or the religious belief you grew up in was kind of like more open-minded and vibey anyway. So, how did you kind of make your way across the Abrahamic bridge to a more earth-based like spirituality, or at least even if that's not your primary practice, like how did you integrate that? Like where did that become a part of your dynamic?
I was just intrigued more than anything. I was curious. I didn't really um like I understand that a lot of the Bible was taken from other stories. Like I don't take it literally, but there are lessons in there. There's little jag like nuggets, you know.
Yeah.
And if you keep things simple, which is like how I like to do it, like what's the most important thing? Love your enemy. Oh, that's okay. Sure. Um
You're like,
it's
we love
simple
that
but not
directive.
easy.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the earth-based stuff, I was just curious about it. I I don't think that Christianity has a monopoly on spirituality or God or anything like that. I don't I I think that's like arrogant and disrespectful to think
Fair.
that, to be honest. Um so I don't know, I was just curious.
I guess the thing that makes me bring that up is because in high school, when I was questioning spirituality and like what that looks like I started to kind of question earlier than high school actually, but I don't think I really moved on that thought until I was around in high school. But like when I was 11, my dad passed away and he passed away from cancer. And so I remember like priests and my uncle and stuff like that telling me things like, you know, if you're praying, like pray to Mary because like Jesus can't refuse her prayers or like whatever, something like that. And so I remember like praying to Mary like every night that my dad would not die from cancer, essentially. And like clearly that didn't turn out. But and I remember being like, well, I played by the rules. So like what's up? And that was like the first seeds of doubt in like my sixth grade brain. And plus I remember going to like catechism for um what's it called? Confirmation.
Mhm.
And I was the kid that basically got in trouble because I was asking questions that they didn't really know how to answer. And
I hate that so much.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so I would get into if I'm sure if my uncle was not the priest at the parish we were attending, I would have been like asked to leave type thing. So, because I was always asking like the more challenging questions. So, when I was questioning spirituality, religion, whatever I was experiencing as a child, I instantly went to another Abrahamic faith because I grew up in Bergen County where there are lots of like Jewish people and a lot of Jewish girls were my friends. And so I was like, maybe I'm supposed to be Jewish. Like, I was like, I don't know that this speaks to me. Um, I did not end up pursuing that because turns out when you apply to be Jewish or when you like when you want to convert, the like a rabbi will deny you multiple times with the intention of you still pursuing and asking. And I didn't know that. So as a teen, I was like, I basically asked the rabbi like how I want to become Jewish. How do you become Jewish? And they were like, "Oh, you can't. We're not like you don't." And I was like, "Okay." So I think had had that not been the tradition of Judaism or something that
Mhm.
happens, I might be Jewish right now, which I think is interesting to think about. But
Yeah.
um, that's neither here nor there. Um, so I guess that was kind of my my question for you. Like, what brought you instead of to another Abrahamic faith, which may be more well known, or maybe that was just because that's how that was known in my area, instead of like earth-based spiritual practices and stuff like that? Because I didn't get to earth-based spiritual practices until like high school and like more. And I would say actually it was after my dad died, so probably from like fifth to eighth or ninth grade, I was like interested in being Jewish, and then I explored I explored deities and earth-based spirituality because like movies that were coming out at the time. And I was like, "Oh yeah, like you can be a witch and that's a thing. It's not just like a movie thing. There's like a whole practice to it." And one year my cousin, she gave me a book called Teen Witch by Silver Ravenwolf after like the movie The Craft had come out, which I was obsessed with. And that was kind of what kind of made me go like, "Oh, this is an option. That's right." So, I guess what do you have like a gateway moment into earth-based spiritualities, or do you have an early memory at all of like, oh, this is something that isn't necessarily just in the movies type thing?
Um, I think it's just genuine curiosity about other spiritualities and in general. I don't think um I don't think there's I don't know. I'm still a novice, I guess, what I'm saying when it comes to earth-based
Yeah.
spiritualities. Yeah.
So then did earth-based spiritualities and all of that come to you like later in life with like more in the now, or when did that come into your realization as like this might be for me?
Um, let's see. I've done a lot of work in Guatemala actually with the indigenous people there, the Mayans.
Hmm.
And and so I'm very curious about their spirituality. It's fascinating to me. They even their versions of Christianity are totally different from what we have in the States. Like their patron saints are like Judas or Simon Peter because they're real. Like you know what I mean?
I love
Like
that.
yeah, yeah. So I was like um I'm just really interested in the like wisdom, I guess, from other cultures and spiritualities.
So it was then the exposure to people outside of the States essentially that is what kind of redirected your attention or allowed you to be like, I should explore this."
Um, yeah, I mean, I think there's something to like to every spirituality. Um,
Yeah.
there's something to it. Um, and I guess I'm just learning. I'm just curious about learning about um what what other people how other people see the world and
I
um
mean, I just love
yeah.
the whole, I guess I love the moment that people try to articulate something that is ultimately inexplainable, inexperienceable. Like it's something that can loosely be experienced, like the moment of like when you have an interaction with divinity or the divine or whatever you want to call it, whether that be through deep meditation, deep prayer, plant medicine, breath work. Like literally there's any number of ways to act chanting. Like there's many song, like you were saying before, there's many ways to access that feeling and that connection. But I think when you try to explain it, that's when things kind of get confused because it's something that as soon as you point at it, you're separate from it. So it's
Right.
hard to say, like, this is the thing. And I think kind of that's, I don't want to say that's how religions and spirituality is created, but I think what happens in many cases with like spiritual practices is there's somebody who's like a real mouthpiece and they have a spiritual experience where they're like they experience unity consciousness or they experience this state of non-duality and then they try to explain it to people and they're like, "Oh my God, this thing happened." And then everyone goes, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about, but it sounds really cool. So like I'll try it." And then
I
and then it's this thing that happens. I'm very
I
fascinated by that moment.
so I think it's like articulated differently by everyone that goes through that, right?
Hmm.
Um and I think it from the the religion that I'm familiar with, like we would explain that as the Holy Spirit. Like it just like that peace that surpasses understanding kind of sense of things. But from like from like a skeptic standpoint that's not experiencing this, um, I guess my or at least not experiencing it currently or haven't experienced it. Um, like I've seen like some crazy stuff happen that shouldn't have happened too. So like when I was a kid, my friend was had an ear infection and he was going in for surgery the next day. Like it was bad, bad.
Yeah.
And my dad like put oil on his ear and the next day he was fine. And I'm like, okay. So like there's something to like that sense of things. And then another example is like I was with someone who's like now a friend of mine. Like it was the night we met. Okay.
Hmm.
We're going to sleep. It was like a long story about how this scenario happened. But we're going to sleep and she goes, "Hey, I wasn't going to tell you this, but I'm a medium and there's someone here who wants to talk to you." I was like, "Okay."
Hey, I really didn't want to bring it up, but I talk
I
to dead people and there's someone
I
here.
can't sleep until I give you this reading. And I was like, "Okay." And then she described someone who I had been grieving, who had um who had lost his life.
Transitioned. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. To a T. And like it was what like we had never met. Like it wasn't like, do you know what I mean?
That's
Like
wild. Yeah. That's
it's
absolutely wild.
it's so I think that experience also contributed to my more earth-based curiosity
Yeah. That'll do
because
it.
like
When
that
all of a sudden you're like, this is not explainable by any version of the reality that I've lived in to this point. And then all of a
and this
sudden,
is yeah,
yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
not mentioned in like that I'm aware of. It's not really mentioned in the Bible a ton, you know. I mean, maybe Joseph in his dreams or something, but like no one was like, "Hey, by the way." I can't sleep because this guy wants to talk to you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I it's so funny that you bring up Joseph and like the dream code and all that stuff,
Oh
or like
yeah.
that was when I was a child, one of my all-time favorite Bible stories.
I was in a dance camp and we performed it.
It's so good. And I mean, I acknowledge that I don't have the singing chops to be this character, but my fantasy version of reality is when I get to play the narrator in Joseph, because
Oh, okay.
best character in my opinion. She gets to really sell it.
That's
And,
awesome.
and so that's one of my favorite Bible stories and Broadway
Yeah.
shows as well.
Good.
But yeah, there is nothing like mediumship that I know of in the Bible other than like maybe Joseph and his dream code, which is more like than anything. That would be like dream divination. It wouldn't even be the same thing as like mediumship because mediumship is
No.
speaking to people on the other side of the veil.
Right, right. And I was like, okay, it was crazy. It was like, so like there's got to be something like to this, you know.
And what
But
age did that happen?
it happened like 2 years ago.
Oh, so like really your
Like,
pivot into knowing earth-based spiritualities has been very recent, like very, very recent.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was curious about the Mayans for at least a decade because I was working with them. Um, but then like this happened and I was like, oh. And I had like another psychic I dated who like he wasn't as good as this. Like, so I was
You're
like,
like, I hope
oh,
he doesn't
well,
see this.
like there were a couple of weird things, and I was like, okay, well, like that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
he reached out to me the day I was dumped and was like, hey, what's going on? Like, out of the blue. And I was like, okay, maybe there's something here.
Maybe there's
But
something here.
yeah,
That's interesting. Yeah, I can see why you would like find your way into the kind of more earth-based practices and stuff like that. I know for
yeah,
me, in addition to that book being given to me and stuff like that, the idea of a polytheistic structure made a lot more sense to my teenage brain than the idea of this monotheistic structure.
yeah,
And also, I had a hard time understanding saints in a way because I was like, so they're gods. And then people were like, no, they're not gods. And I was like, so they're angels. And they were like, no, they're not angels. And I'm like, then people are like, they were people. And I'm like, they're people that are like more blessed. and and like again, I kept coming up to these places where the catechism people didn't really have answers and stuff like that. So that was just always an interesting pathway for me to explore, and just the constant not being able to kind of wrap my head around it. And then when I went to a public high school, and public middle school, and after fifth grade, actually, after fourth grade, I was in public school the whole way. Um, so things like uh, mythology and stuff like that were taught as part of history because like art history and things like that, there was like it's relative.
mhm.
There's during like many art periods, they've covered things like the Baroque period, all of it. Anyway, we're not gonna. This isn't an art history class, but um, and I remember thinking there's a god of thunder. Okay. And there's a goddess of marriage. Okay. Like that kind of made sense for me, at least developmentally at that point, that there could be a deity that presides over a series of things or things that were kind of like their domain. And it was much easier for me to wrap my head around it versus the idea that there was this one omnipotent being and no one could really fully explain it. And I was like, but why can't you explain it, right? These other things have explanations. Why can't you
Right.
explain it? And then, interestingly enough, like post having an experience that was non-dualistic, whatever you want to call it, like this moment of experiencing divinity, um, after that, that's when I was like, I get the idea of it being one thing, but it's also not one thing in the way it was described to me growing up. That's the other
No,
part.
I
So I
know.
was like, that's interesting because then afterwards, so like I still sometimes will go to church because even though
Mhm.
that's not like my primary belief structure, it's I don't feel not at home in church necessarily.
Right.
Um I do find it intriguing though, because I'll go and I'll observe the mass and I'll look around and I'm like, do they know how pagan they're being? Like that's part of like the thing that always intrigues me. And then there's that part that always is like it tickles me. And then having done a deep dive in like the areas of mysticism and like more unified spiritual practices, I I always look for the symbolism, both like in the art and the architecture and in the language of the pieces that are read. And so I'm always curious and find myself wondering if the people that are speaking on the pulpit or singing in the the
Choir.
choir, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Like if if they are aware that they're participating in something that is not inherently Catholic or Christian or whatever. Like I'm always curious if there's an awareness around what they're doing outside of what they've been taught.
And there might be an awareness. Like you don't know until you talk to
Correct.
them. Yeah.
And that's the part that I find so fascinating because in my opinion, my personal BS, my personal belief system is that um divinity, the divine, God, whatever you want to call it, I think it's all correct, no matter what it is you believe. Like literally whatever you believe, I think is correct because it's the human ego trying to explain this is this is what it is. But ultimately it's something that you can't point at or fully explain because it's not a thing. It is no thing. It is the presence of nothingness or like the void, the doctrine of the void if we're going all
Right.
Hindu and like the Upanishads path with it. So that that experience is just always the draw for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like it's so funny because people struggle with the Trinity so much. They're like, well, he's like one thing, but it's three things. And I'm like, and I wrote a paper on this in college. I was like, it's the mind, body, and spirit
Yeah.
of your of like that's what it is. It's just that's of your God. That's what that is. And if you pay attention to what Jesus said, he's like, or Protestants in general, there's the priesthood of all believers. It's like a whole thing. Like that's why when when the Europeans were conquering the world, you know, um, the
Oh, the
people,
Crusades.
the Crusades and the Protestants were in there too.
Yeah.
Um, but the places where the Protestants were, they valued education so that people could read the Bible. And there was like this fundamental thing in the zeitgeist about the priesthood of all believers. And so you'll find to this day that there's more education, more human rights. There's just they're just better places to live where the Protestants were conquering as opposed to where the Catholics were conquering. Because the Catholics were like, we're going to yell at you in Latin and you're not going to know what the hell's happening.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Uh, I like the idea of the priesthood of all believers. And can you expand on what that means? Because this is my first time hearing that expression, and I like the idea of it, like what it conjures for me.
Yeah, so um and I think it's different for everybody. Like that's kind of the message. But for me, it's just like do what gives you peace, you know? Like and that's like that's the right choice. Like if you want to think about what to do, like do what like that's the message. Like you don't need like it's nice to have a community, but you don't need a Starbucks and a praise band to do that.
This is true. This is very true.
When
Yeah.
Jesus was there turning over the money tables and like throwing table literally throwing tables, like I don't understand how churches now can have Starbucks in their lobby.
That's wild to me. I mean, I don't live somewhere where that's a thing, but that
Yeah.
is wild that it is a thing, in fact.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that. Well, it's not it's I was I just said like I don't know how I feel about that, but also it's not my business. Like
No, no.
not my
It's
circus,
just
not my
like
monkeys. I don't
exactly. Exactly.
um but I just think I think that spirituality and the experience of the relationship that all of us have with divinity, whether intended or not, it exists even if your relationship with divinity is that you don't have a relationship with divinity, that's still you have to have an opinion on it. You have to have a thought around it in some capacity, just because
Right.
it's such a through line for all of humanity. So even
Right.
if you're saying that thing is not a thing, you're still acknowledging it. So so
Right.
that that paradox is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I guess that's unless you have anything else that you want to volunteer or share, I think we can probably wrap things up.
But we can wrap it up. I I just want to thank you for your time and I
Yeah,
thought this was a pretty good
leave us with
discussion.
a final inspired thought, Alex. What do you?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Try to
Um,
love your enemy, I guess.
yeah, we love that.
Right?
Love your enemy.
That's my the the that's what I struggle with the most. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Do your best to be kind to all people, especially
exactly.
people that you would find it challenging to be kind to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us, Alex. I'm gonna
Yeah,
turn off
thank
the
you.
thing and then we'll chat. So
Okay.
wave. Bye.